It's not personal. But it's never personal. Life is not capable of giving you some vengeful narrative or sad storyline. Life can only give you pieces. You decide what to make of them, what to build with them, what they mean. Why'd you quit? Well, because things got difficult. I had to. Why'd you keep going? Well, things were difficult. I had to. It all comes back to the basic premise that our worlds are defined within. They're merely validated externally. And when you think about it, it becomes obvious, right? Very rarely will someone see strength in you that you don't see in yourself, that doesn't originate internally, right? Very rarely will you be held to a higher regard than that which you hold yourself to. You dictate. The world reacts. It is, in a way, almost funny that we look everywhere for solutions, except the place where solutions are manufactured. Tolstoy famously said, "Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself." Well, the quickest way to change your life is to understand that the quote-unquote bad things, they're just not personal. When people hurt you, those people are in pain, they're insecure, they're fighting their own demons. When the world seems to be falling apart around you, it's not that life is an enemy or adversary. It's not telling you no, it's just life doing life things. But those happenings, they don't have an agenda, they have no charge. They just wait for you to pick them up and provide meaning. It seems to me that in most debates, for example, the one who stays calm and collected and locked in on the facts of the argument generally, that individual has the upper hand. As opposed to the one who gets all worked up and starts screaming and reverting to insults. The conversation itself is not emotionally charged. At least not until that charge is inserted into the discussion. Now, imagine you sitting down in a chair face to face with fate. It's throwing facts at you, objective truths, realities of sorts. And you have to decide how that will be handled. What will you make of that information and where will you take it? Can you stay composed when you don't like what you hear, when you're not crazy about what you see? Can you detach yourself from it? Put a stop to those self-created storylines that, let's be honest, aren't tied to reality. You're capable of incredible things for yourself and others when you're able to detach and depersonalize the inevitable disappointment and hurt that comes with growth. When you don't take the setbacks as a referendum on you as a person, but merely the next puzzle to be solved, because that's what every situation is. A puzzle, a riddle, a code that must be cracked. Every challenge is tools being dropped at your feet and the universe asking, "Hey, what are you gonna make of this now?" So when you feel slighted by life, which happens, I think we've all been there, do your best to remember that life is in no way an adversary. Fate is in no way an opponent. They're just providing resources, opportunities. It's you who is the architect, responsible for what will become of what's been dropped around you. And I think when you can grasp that and change how you process reality, you also take the wheel and are able to then define reality. Most react. But the ones with emotional intelligence, the ones who can refer to, as Trevor Moawad called it, neutral thinking with curiosity and confidence as opposed to pride and ego. Those are the ones who will change themselves, the people around them, and the world. If you change how you look at life, life will inevitably change. If you want to do yourself a monumental favor, start today. That thing you've been dreaming about, that ideal state, take one small step now. Because I promise you, there'll be a point down the road where you thank yourself. It's just hard to see in the moment. In fact, it's funny how things only make sense in hindsight. Our greatest accomplishments are the result of those little unsure, sometimes uninformed steps we took years back. Decisions we made, quote unquote, back then. And how powerful to think that one choice you make today can ultimately become your back then moment. Your inflection point that changed it all. You are constantly, always, every day, navigating a world that contains the pieces for creation. You're an architect, able to build at your discretion. In those current moments, with a vision and determination, will they transform into the back then moments that start everything? One video, poorly edited, sloppily put together, released to the world without aim or direction, was one of my back then moments. A conversation I initiated with someone who has since changed my life, a back then moment. Choosing to move or adjust or stop or start, all back then moments. Those critical inflection points that change everything. The things we need most tend to, not be a surprise to us. I think all of us, whatever they are in our own individual worlds, we're aware. We know what needs to be done. The challenge is friction in making it happen, right? Either we're scared in the moment, or that road to the ideal state seems like a road too far to walk. We're so consumed by what we don't have that we never give those back then moments a chance. We never initiate and let them materialize, thinking that you have to know everything before you step out your front door. And this idea changed my life. You don't have to know how things will play out. When you're starting something meaningful, the fact that it feels right or interests you alone can be enough, more than enough. It's a calling or invitation to move into the abyss. That powerful proverb so many of us have heard, the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. It's like we need to start unrolling the red carpet. Because what we'll learn as it unfolds will change us. We'll zig and we'll zag, we'll adjust, make mistakes, sometimes have to backtrack and correct. But none of that happens without step one, right? Nothing happens until you give yourself permission to begin. There's a saying, do one thing every day that scares you. Why? Because you learn to see past the facade that is the fear of starting. You come to understand that without going, there's no change. Without change, things remain how they are, and in a world that only gives you what you ask for, what a tragedy to exit empty-handed. To have had so much opportunity and let it slip by. And this is a message I've delivered a million different times in a million different ways. I do that because, one, it changed my life, and two, I still need it. I need the reminders. It's not like fear goes away. No, I'd do the thing I'm scared of. It would become normal, and without my knowing, I'd create a resistance to doing the next uncomfortable thing. Right? That's the friction that we'll always have to fight. And it's a good fight to take on. Doing one thing every day that scares me reminds me to keep pushing. Not because of how it'll make me feel today, but because of what I'll become tomorrow. You know how rewarding it is for me to do things like speak on stage? Calmly, confidently tell a story or share my voice? 15 years ago, I was so bad at that it was just cringy. It was humiliating, right? But that's not the universe saying no. That's the universe extending a hand and asking if I want it. Like truly want it. And if no, fine. But if yes, then what was required was for me to open that door and step out. Practice. Be vulnerable. As years go by, those quote-unquote back then moments made me who I am today. And I can tell you that I'm proud and grateful that I stepped into that chaos, and everyone has some version of that. And it comes down to an understanding that someday you'll not only thank yourself, but be overwhelmed when reflecting back on your personal transformation. Sure, not a giant leap, but the courage to start and a million steps after that point. Some brought value immediately, some took a little longer, left you with wisdom, but it all meant something. So remember, if you want to do yourself a favor, start today. Begin the beautiful journey of growth, of adjustment, of evolution. Who knows where it'll take you? There will be highs and lows and everything in between. But one thing that is for sure is you'll emerge a different person. A much different person than you would have been had you stayed. What goes into your decision making? Particularly the big decisions, the important ones. I heard a quote that moved me from Jeff Bezos. It was a video on Twitter, and he said, "My best decisions in business and in life have been made with heart, intuition, and guts, but not analysis." He continues, "When you can make a decision with analysis, you should do so, but it turns out that in life, your most important decisions are always made with instinct, intuition, and taste." And that connected some dots for me. Right? Because I think the big decisions, the life-altering decisions, where we are pointing the ship, should be made via intuition. Data can't tell you which direction is most important to you. And even if it could, if your heart's not in it, if it's not aligned with who you are and where you feel you need to be, it wouldn't really matter anyway. Like the most important decisions we make, even right out of the gate, there's this feeling of it's aligned or it isn't. We know right away. We feel it right away. Someone once said to me, if you can't decide if something's good or not, flip a coin. Because you'll know while that coin is in the air which side you want it to land on. And we do, we know. And so after deciding, after letting intuition guide us, then and only then, in my humble opinion, of course, do we calculate the how. That's the analysis part. Once we've committed and our hearts are aligned,
Yeah, you use the data all around you, the evidence collected along the way to map an efficient path. I think people tend to put the heart and the brain against each other as though they're rivals. I know I certainly have, but I think they need to coexist together. Think about it. If you select your North Star based on analysis, you'll probably lack the drive to get there. And conversely, once decided, if you map the course based solely on heart or feel, you'll be operating blind, limiting your ability to make accurate adjustments based on real-life circumstances. You need both. I'm making some pretty substantial changes here in my life. I'm moving again, this time to Arizona, starting up some new ventures, placing myself in a few situations that weren't even on the radar 6 months ago. I can't explain my rationale using mathematical models. Right? I just know deep in my soul that it's where I need to be. It feels right. It's calling me. The same way 10 years ago, writing speeches in a small Boston apartment for no revenue at the time couldn't be explained. Can't show your work on a decision like that, right? It's just something that feels good. And, once you jump in, then you start relying on the brain, the analysis to grow and improve and evolve. But I do believe if we made the big decisions based only on the things we could prove or the things we were sure of, the biggest and most important leaps would never have been made. Risks wouldn't be taken. I mean, you don't take risks because you run the numbers and the odds work. You take risks because life is, when you break it down, remove the nuance and details, about the journey. It's about the ride. And so you jump. You commit to a path. And maybe you realize it's not the path for you. Let's say things don't work out. Well, now you are gifted that wisdom. Understanding you previously never had, right? And you can take that all with you onto the next venture. How do you put a price on that? How do you quantify lessons of that magnitude? What data tells you how important that courage was? We all know the answer. Now, of course, again, data has a story to tell, and numbers don't lie, but they also never tell the whole story. They can't paint the picture in its entirety. Which is why I'd scream from the mountaintops, if it means something to you, it's worth exploration. If it matters, try. If it lights up your curiosity, give it attention. Maybe it doesn't work the way you thought or hoped, but it will lead you to the next thing, and then the next, and the next. It will provide the type of value that simply can't be quantified or even understood in the moment. The story of your life must be written by you. It must align with the person looking back at you in the mirror. That's the litmus test. That's the benchmark. So trust yourself and your intuition to write it. One of life's greatest lessons is that yesterday is only as powerful as we allow it to be. Yesterday is an idea, a story, a movie that started and ended. Now, it's quite possible that story or that ending is disappointing, or it hurts to look back on. Perhaps a reminder of something that wasn't ideal, something you want to break away from. So the question is, why do we give that old story power? Why do we relive it, create this self-inflicted wound? See, the past undoubtedly played a critical role, It brought you to where you are now. It, in many ways, shaped your worldview, constitutes your beliefs. It was the very road to this moment, and there's value in that. But imagine this scenario. Imagine stepping into your car, turning the keys, and thinking to yourself that you can, in this very moment, only drive down the roads you drove on yesterday. Only associate with the street signs you know, the places you've already gone. Your reality now is determined by what you've already done. So adjust and get used to it. You would say that's outrageous, right? Yesterday's path has nothing to do with where I'm going now. Just like a boat's wake trailing off behind it has nothing to do with where it's going next. The person holding the wheel controls that. We are saturated with freedom. There is so much opportunity and possibility and potential in front of us that we fail to see because we can't stop thinking about that fictitious story we call yesterday. We confuse the path we took then for the one we need now, the wake from the steering wheel, what is, and that story about what was. The gateway to change is unshackling ourselves from those imaginary monsters. And more often than not, the answer isn't in finding some solution, it's in cutting ties with those things that no longer serve us. Then we see the world as it truly is. Then we see the magic laid out before us. And I get that it's easier said than done. Leaving a part of us behind hurts. Looking in the mirror and being vulnerable enough to say, I can be more than this. It's not easy, but it's possible. And everything starts with how we see ourselves. And when we remain captives to the past, everything about who we think ourselves to be is outdated. We're neglecting one of our superpowers, the perpetual ability to restart. And one of the most important conversations I've ever had was on this topic. It seemed trivial at the time, but I was having lunch with a friend, and we're talking, and I mentioned to her that I was full. And she goes, well, then why are you still eating? And I'm like, because I paid for it, right? I wanted to get my money's worth. And she says in a very, pragmatic way, Eddie, just because you paid for it doesn't mean you need to eat it, right? It's a sunk cost. Why don't you move on? And the whole thing seems silly, right? It's like, yeah, if you're not hungry, don't eat. Move on. But in the grand scheme of things, how many of us keep on consuming that which doesn't serve us? How many of us stay too long when we should be letting go? We let the path behind us dictate the one before us. See, there's a tendency to overvalue what we know, to feel so invested in how things are, even when we're not happy or it's not healthy, that we'll take the pain of now over the potential for something greater. And that's precisely why the unknown is so terrifying. It's not concrete. It's a world unsettled. And man, do we hate being unsettled. But what we fail to realize is that every time we close our eyes, take a breath, and work up the courage to step into that unknown, to leave yesterday behind us, life gives us new pieces. It resets the stage. It provides new tools to build something incredible, something more ideal, more conducive to our goals, our hopes, and our dreams. And the thought is, well, but what if things become worse than they are right now? What if I move forward and I find myself more confused, more lost? What if things are more chaotic? And that may, for a moment, be true. But what we do is we adjust. We learn things we never knew. We see things through a lens that we never could. Touch things that we never thought existed. It wasn't in staying, but in leaving, that we rediscovered who we were meant to be. that we allowed our truest selves to flourish, and worst case scenario, contrary to popular belief, it's not that the world ends. No, the worst case scenario, should you find the courage to move forward, is that you end up right back where you started. A little more confident, a little bolder, and better prepared to live this life like you never had. All that's needed is for you to convince yourself that there is more. You just need to taste the fruit, step into the sunlight. That's the difference between reality and the story in your head. Reality is that this world has for you everything you need to change, to grow, explore, build a life that means something. It has the support structures and the resources for you to pull yourself back up every time you fall. To say, okay, that hurt, but now let's try a different angle. There is undoubtedly what you need. And the question is never whether the X on that treasure map exists. Trust me, it's there. The question is whether you can pause that story in your head. The tales of a dark, mean, and scary world trying to hold you down. Pause the idea that you're nothing more than the you of yesterday. You're nothing more than how people knew you to be. Pause the idea that you're nothing without that job title or that relationship. Pause the idea that you need him or her or them in your life. Every day you wake up, you are a blank canvas. Who cares about yesterday? What do you want to paint now? When you walk out your front door, where do you want to go now? Step outside that circle of familiarity. See how artificial and in some cases ridiculous these boundaries are that we place around ourselves. Life is an invitation, not a set of requirements. And when you free yourself of that, not only will you feel like someone new, not only will you experience life as it was meant to be experienced, but you'll see that this world will conform to your new definition. This world wants to support you. It wants to lift you up. And yeah, it may be challenging and strenuous. It may force you to work harder and be braver than you've ever been. But it is, at the end of the day, your ally. You just have to see your future self before it materializes, when no one else gets it. So move on from all that does not serve you. Break away from the old rules, regulations, and guidelines. Maybe you exhausted time and energy into creating this reality. Maybe it feels like a monumental piece of your identity. Maybe right now is the only security you have. Fine. But my hope is that you can respect it and walk away. See it as the sunken cost that it is. Just because you paid to get there doesn't mean you need to keep paying to make wrong decisions. Just because it took your time doesn't mean it's entitled to keep stealing your time. Just because it's part of your identity now doesn't mean it must be tomorrow. Just because it creates security doesn't mean it's right. Jails and steel bars are also incredibly secure. No, today we are breaking free, leaving the past in the past and setting our sights on the horizon. Today is the end of yesterday and the beginning of the rest of your life. At the intersection of what is and what can be, our stories are written. It's where decisions are made and lives are ultimately defined. In which way you go when staring at this fork in the road can mean everything. Maybe you go left. Take the easy path, minimal upside, minimal downside, proven and tangible. It gives immediate identity, but also brings with it
some degree of regret, not because you won't like who you are, but because you'll never know what you could have been. Maybe you can't live with that. Maybe you go right. Let's say you roll the dice, dream chaser, eyes fixated on the horizon, moving toward it, soon to realize that the world you live in will bring you to your knees faster than you can blink. That uncertainty hurts, that effort without immediate validation is pain, and that the road less traveled is less traveled because of the difficulty associated with it. And now you have a very important question to ask yourself. Do you have what it takes? Can you see the big picture when the sky appears to be falling down around you? When all it takes is to backpedal and be comfortable again, to take the other road, to return to what you knew, can you still move forward? See, it's a funny thing when you're in pain, it becomes very easy to forget why you began. The pragmatic human brain sees discomfort as a problem and it wants it gone immediately. People don't give up because they're cowards. They don't quit because they don't have what it takes. They give up because they can no longer see the big picture. They forgot why they started. When all you see is directly in front of you, you lose the ability to see your finish line. When you're at a crossroad, you have to know this. If you take the hard road, you are betting on the future at the expense of the present. Dreams are a sacrifice. They're not some fluffy concept invented to prop you up after a hard day. Sure, they're the top of the mountain, but they're also the bottom. They're the dirt, the rocks, the scratching, the clawing. They're what people don't see. The chapters that are not read aloud. And when you're in it, when you are truly in it, uncertainty needs to be embraced like it's the wind to your sails. You signed that dotted line for a reason, because you can see past the immediate, the now. Because to get to the top, you start at the ground floor and you elevate past every single level that stands between you and your dream. Now will not intimidate or discourage because you are bigger than right now. You are the pages unwritten. And you did what so few people are willing to do. You didn't look at the pen, you picked it up. Now write a story for the ages. Don't stay down in the ashes. Use the pieces to build new things. Don't dwell on what hurts. Use the lessons to chart a course to happier days. Don't fixate on what's missing. There's an endless supply of what's not there. Instead, rejoice over and capitalize on what remains. Don't take misfortune personally. Remember that life is neutral. It's you who has to decide whether to shrink in its shadow or grow because of it. Don't compare yourself to people around you. We only see highlight reels. We only see the best of our neighbors, but they have their demons, their problems, their struggles too. Instead, compare yourself to who you were yesterday. That's the only worthwhile benchmark. Don't exhaust time wishing you had someone else's gifts or natural abilities. Sure, they have theirs, but you have yours too.
Explore and go all in on your unique superpowers, because that's exactly what they are, should you choose to bring them to life. Don't let the gravity of the moment keep you down. You might feel lost or defeated, but it's not always about feeling good. Sometimes it's whether or not we can move forward when we don't. So step into that unknown, knowing sure you might not be at your best, but that lives are often defined during our imperfect moments. Don't waste energy on hope. The future's a construct, an idea that you have no control over, and that will make you its slave if you allow it to. See the value of right now. Right now, you have the power to change, adapt, evolve, to make things happen. Right now is all you'll ever have to control. Build, tear down, retreat, advance, follow, or lead. Everything is a choice. Life provides the components to go up or down, left or right. It's a perpetual fork in the road. Endless opportunities. But you are the architect. You decide what they become. So you're stepping onto a rocket ship, leaving planet Earth, and you have one message to give to the world before you take off. What is it? For me, it's an easy one. It's that life is not as serious as we make it out to be. It's the most important thing I've learned. And perhaps the simplicity of that message might make people a little uneasy or take them by surprise, right? How exactly is it helpful? Well, I'll explain, right? Waking up every day is not an obligation or requirement. It's not another test or make or break audition to impress those around you. It's a gift. It's a challenge. It's something to be explored. If the odds of being alive, living, breathing are 1 in 400 trillion, you've won. You have, as you sit or stand right now, already done the miraculous. So why not cash in? Why not live, push boundaries? To live scared, to play safe or do nothing with your life is like winning the lottery and keeping that bag full of cash under your bed for the rest of your life because you're scared of what could happen to it. It defeats the purpose entirely. And I'm not exaggerating, this mentality has changed my life. If I lose, who cares? If people laugh, who cares? If I have to swallow my pride and be broke for a few years, who cares? If I'm the unsure one, the one who doesn't know what the immediate future looks like, fine, who cares? I'll take the upside. I'll take the fun, the hard work, and the adventure. I talk about this all the time. I'll never forget walking into this bar with my friends 6 years ago now. I just left my job, right? And I remember I'm talking to this girl at the bar, story time here, and she asks me what I do for a living, right? Because of course she does. And you know, I tell her I just left my job. I got this really cool idea for a YouTube channel. I think it's gonna be incredible. And I'll never forget how fast that convo shut down, right? Blink and she'd walked away. And I thought, you know what? This is perfect. I'm gonna remember this probably for the rest of my life. Why? Because it's a symbol. It's a sign that the immediate is what stops us from the best things down the road. Leaving my job, as hard as that maybe 1 or 2 year stretch was the best thing I've ever done. I am living exponentially better than I was before I had the courage to make that move. See, if life is about not screwing up, then yes, I'm still in that cubicle getting yelled at for including too much color in my PowerPoint presentations, but that's not what life is. Life is opportunity, not hiding so that you don't lose. No, it's about making something where you are with what you have. And my friends, there is so much out there. There is a win on the other side of every door you walk through, even when it's hard to see. Right now is the perfect time to be talking about this. A little crazy coronavirus has people being quarantined, everyone freaking out. Guys, take a step back and find the opportunity. I just read the other day, Shakespeare wrote King Lear when he was being quarantined because of the plague. There is always a win. Use the time, find solutions. Maybe you've always wanted to start a business. Great, take a small step, create the business page on Facebook, do something small, get the ball rolling. See, when life is a game, you're finding ways to win. Why do all these entrepreneurs talk about the hardship they've encountered before they found success? Because they knew that losses wouldn't define them. But in life, just like in a game, you win and you lose. But what happens is, through repetition, you get better and better, and the wins start accumulating, becoming more substantial and consistent. See, most decisions, and let's say worst case scenario, you take the leap and things implode. Let's just be dramatic for a second. Everything goes wrong. Loss, 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 loss. The reality is 99% of your decisions, they're reversible. If you don't get the intended result, you can backpedal and adjust. You know what's irreversible though? Inaction. You know what you can't improve upon? Steps you've never taken. You can't be propelled by dreams that are hanging out in your head. Living scared is looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I hope nothing goes wrong today. Living fully is looking in the mirror and saying, I'm going to make something significant today. I'm going to take risks. I'm going to find solutions. I'm going to propel myself forward. So that, as I make my way onto this rocket ship, would be my message. Stop playing to avoid losing and start playing to win. Life is not serious. It's not a standardized test. It's a blank page waiting for a story. And stories are written by the bold, the risk takers, the ones who stop wishing and go out and make things happen. Wrong actions can be corrected, improved upon, but life through a lens of scarcity is a sealed fate. So how about living like this is the only life you have? Like each day is a metaphorical currency that you can't take with you to your grave. It must be spent, it must be cherished and utilized fully. So here's to not only dreaming, but finding the courage to delve headfirst into a journey so great that no stone is left unturned, no day is without the magic of your creation. Because if life is serious, it is a serious opportunity to live fully, and nothing less.